r/ProRevenge. I accidentally got my ex-boss investigated by the federal government. Now, I'm not usually one to take revenge. I have extreme anxiety and bipolar disorder, so conflict generally comes with panic attacks and severe depression. Generally speaking, I will just shrug it off and avoid the situation again. However, one thing that I will always fight is betrayal, and this is a story of how I ruined my ex-boss's business for her stabbing me in the back. Immediate apologies if I jump around a lot. I'm kind of typing in a stream of consciousness kind of way. I worked for a medical facility, a small privately owned facility in a small town near my home. I was hired originally to tend to patients' daily needs, cooking, cleaning, etc., but moved up the ladder a bit as positions opened up, taking on whatever duties my boss, the owner, brought my way. At one point, I had even been the medical billing manager, which I had zero experience in, but she threw me into because no one else was available until her daughter got out of jail, charges, at which point I was sent over to data entry. I didn't mind the data entry job. I'm good with numbers and organizations, type fast, and am pretty computer literate. None of these positions came with any kind of benefits, though. Not once was I offered a raise for the positions I had taken, nor was I offered any extra benefits. The only raise I had gotten was a 50-cent increase, the standard 6-month raise, once in my almost 2 years at the job. Let me tell you about the structure of the company. The owner had started the company a little over 3 years before I had started, and she had absolutely no experience running any kind of company. Her sister was, but she felt like she needed to spread her wings and that this was God's plan for her and all that. Hiring was also a joke as she employed several family members, including her ex-husband somehow, and gave them priority on everything. She had several foster children that she roped into the business and put them all in management positions, no matter how inexperienced and inept they were. A few of the managers were fresh out of prison or jail on drug charges or on probation for some crime or another. I started working there to help myself, oddly enough. I had been unemployed for several years as my anxiety and depression make it very hard to interact with others. I felt like this job was a good start to reestablish my life and build a future for myself and my amazing wife. I have a decent amount of debt due to some bad decisions. Depression makes you not really care about what happens to the future you, and I was hoping to build up from the ashes and move forward with my life. Due to this, though, I poured my heart and soul into this place, always striving to make it better, and this even killed me inside as I was trying to put myself out there only to get stabbed in the back by someone I trusted. Now, this company, because of its size and the owner's inexperience with running a medical facility, had a lot of problems. Bills not going out on time, unsecured networks, unheard patient complaints, the list goes on. While I became more ingrained in the fabric of the facility, I started to notice a lot of fixes that needed to take place for organizational and security reasons, including a couple of major health information privacy violations that needed to be fixed. When I went in that Friday, I did my normal routine data maintenance tasks, then went up to the front to see if the office manager, not one of the owner's relations, had anything that needed to be done. The owner was up with her, which was strange since she was usually running around doing things that needed to be done outside the office but weren't unheard of. When I had come in that morning, my computer had not been working, which wasn't uncommon as the IT person was her current husband. Not a terrible guy, but look who he married. When I saw her, I gave her the usual pleasant greetings and asked her if IT had been having issues with the network. She told me yes, so I didn't think anything was wrong, and I moved back into the workroom to work on some lower priority tasks that had to be done. The owner came into the room 15 or so minutes later with the general manager and said they needed to speak to me privately.
Psst. Let's be honest. Does your room look dull as sh**? Yeah, well, most do. Luckily, I just launched Rufus Rugs. Custom, hand-tufted rugs. And no, this isn't some BS dropshipping company. We have a warehouse in Canada where me and my friends hand-tuft every single rug. So if you're looking to bring your room to life with some awesome anime rugs, or literally anything you can think of, we can get it done for you. From Rick and Morty to The Last Airbender, we've got you covered. Hit the link in the description to get a free quote.
This didn't throw any flags because she had done that before when she changed up my position, so I just figured I was being moved around again. When she came into the room, she pulled out one of the company iPads. These iPads were used for the intake process, specifically for taking pictures of clients and adding them to the electronic health record system for the counselors and floor staff. I had been thrust into the intake process after the administrator handling intakes was terminated. I don't have much experience with Apple products specifically, so I did exactly what she told me to do to send the images to our system. She asked me to come around to show me something. She pulled up the screen and showed me that the iPad was registered to a person that was not affiliated with the facility at all. I later found out who it was, and that'll be another reveal a bit later. This is not okay. This is a health information privacy violation, and we could get in a lot of trouble for this. Now, this was a company iPad, splash screen and all. I had no reason to believe that it wasn't secured for any reason. Besides, that wouldn't be the employee's responsibility, especially when the owner herself had told them to use it in the way they were using it. I didn't feel that it was my problem in the slightest, as I was not the only one who had used the device for exactly the same thing. I try my best to solve problems when they happen, rather than dwell on the problem, especially when it would be time sensitive to fix to prevent violations and fines. So I asked, okay, how can we fix this? I'm willing to help. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, we fix this by terminating your employment. I just stood there, shocked. I looked up at her, confused, hoping, praying that I had misheard her in some weird way and asked, you're firing me? She said yes, and I swear that a small grin flashed over her face as she said it. I looked over to the general manager, who was crying, well, trying to hide that she was crying. I asked her why I was getting terminated for something I didn't have control over and over something she had explicitly asked me to do, but she just fell silent and told me I needed to leave. I was friends with everyone in the office aside from her spawn, so I said my goodbyes to them, hugged them, and cried, all while the owner stood there over my shoulder ushering me out, still with a near smile on her face. That was the moment I knew this was not going to end well for her. First, the fallout that she created directly for herself. I was friends with almost every person in the facility, including the counselors. One of them had been contemplating leaving for a long time, and I had repeatedly talked him into staying or to try and tough it out and maybe next week would be better, etc. I was fired Friday, and I found out later through another ex-employee that he had resigned immediately that Monday. I don't know for certain that he left because I got canned, but the timing seems a bit too coincidental to me. After he left, another one left, then two others, and by the end of it, the owner was left with two counselors to run both residential and day treatment, one who was just coming back from maternity leave. I feel so bad for her. I hope she left. She was a wonderful person to work with. And another who had only been doing day treatment, not the more intensive residential treatment. I like to think that she created a domino chain, but I can't confirm for sure. Now, to my part, since I had been in nearly every position in the business, I knew everything about the inner workings of it. I knew how much money they still were trying to recuperate from insurance, a lot of the tech issues, and most importantly, violations. When I took the data entry job, a lot of the security issues became apparent to me, so I brought them directly to her to be fixed immediately. On the tech side of things, the electronic health record system had no clearance levels for any patients, meaning everyone, right down to maintenance, could see the patient's counselor and vitals notes. The electronic health record system was also easily able to be compromised as it could be logged into from any computer, even home computers. I brought both of these, as well as a few minor state statute violations that needed to be fixed. Stuff like employees not being able to get copies of the correct DHA statutes or employee manuals. On the procedure side of things, intakes were originally done in the file room, where client files were everywhere, all in cardboard boxes with name tabs visible to everyone. If there were more than one or two intakes, they would be taken into the cafeteria to do all of the paperwork. Imagine signing up for a residential facility and getting your belongings searched in a cafeteria where people are coming and going. Billing was right next to the day treatment room, and the door was frequently left open and client names talked about loudly. The walls were also paper thin, so anyone in the day treatment room could hear client names while treatment was in session. Food and water temperature logs were frequently not kept. The organization was such a mess, and one I was trying to clean up, 4 years of unkempt client files to sort and scan. And the most damning of all, I found out that the owner and her daughter had been charging old clients insurance, and both the owner and her daughter had been using drugs. I can't 100% confirm personally that the owner was, but I saw the daughter use a pill bottle of Suboxone that was not hers. The owner had been accused by an ex-coworker who had bolted immediately without warning. As soon as I got home, I was still in shock and just sat at my computer and cried. I had given everything up to this place, sacrificed countless hours of my time. Overtime was paid, but you were reprimanded if you went over, and I was over nearly every week doing extra tasks that needed to be done, and even set back my own mental health recovery a significant amount, all in the name of progress. That sadness slowly turned to rage, and I'm not normally a person who gets angry. I have an exceptionally long fuse. But when I get mad, so I set my plan into action. After I signed myself up for unemployment, I started making some calls. I called the Department of Health Services and lodged a complaint against the facility, stating all of the privacy violations I knew. I got the typical, okay, we'll contact you if something changes or if more information is needed spiel. Once I was off the phone with them, I started making calls to insurance companies. BCBS, Network Health, UHC, and Prairie States were all giving calls. I gave them the tax ID and NPI of the facility, information I learned while I was the billing manager, and told them to review their contracts at the time the services were rendered and check to see what they were billing them for. After all of that, I just sat there completely numb. A few weeks passed by and I checked my unemployment to see that I was paid so I wouldn't get behind on payments, and saw that there was a hold on my account, stating that my employer had determined my termination to be negligent and misconduct on my part. I was called by UI and asked a few questions, and they determined on a surface level that I was not at fault and that I would still receive my benefits. A sigh of relief activated. I thought it was over and I could start moving on, but nope. I got a letter in the mail stating that my ex-employer was appealing the decision, and that if the judge determined that I was at fault, not only would my benefits be cut, but I would also get my wages garnished once I did get the job to pay back everything that had been paid out. A few panic attacks later, I'm reading everything. I'm reading up on statutes and reading through all of the evidence the owner had submitted, writing notes on my computer about all of the inconsistencies and errors in her statements. 4 pages later, I start seeking out ex-coworkers who had worked there and left. I contacted the person I stated earlier, the one who bolted without warning, and asked her if she'd be willing to testify. She initially accepted, but then declined as she was actually key in an investigation against them as well. Hers had to deal with the counselor's side of things. I'll try to explain this the best I can without giving away too much. One of the counselors had a specialization, and she was the only one who was qualified to provide that service. When she left, she was replaced with a counselor who had the in-training qualification, so she was supposed to be supervised by a medical director with that qualification. The owner did not have that, but the entire time had been advertising, providing, and billing that qualification services. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Back to my thing now. So I hadn't talked to her in a while, and I caught up and told her what had happened. She told me it was total crap, that she and several others had used it in the same way, etc., etc. I also asked her if she was familiar with the name that had been on the iPad. She asked me again for the name and if I was 100% sure that it was correct. I said yes and immediately asked why. That's an ex-client. Ex-coworker had worked there since the very beginning, so I have no reason to doubt her. The owner had either bought or stolen, who knows, an iPad from an ex-client, had not wiped it, and then gave it to staff to pass confidential health information to the company's servers. I was immediately on the phone with the Department of Health Services again, asking to amend my original complaint to add this to it. Come the day of the appeal, I'm shaking and on the verge of panicking, and the call comes through. It takes everything in my being not to start screaming at the owner when I hear her disgusting, gravelly voice. I sat there with all of my notes, the DHS manual and statutes, and all the evidence that I had. This is where the owner started making a lot of mistakes. I found out after the fact that she was actually headed to court to defend herself against another lawsuit, aside from the 2 investigations and this hearing. So she had her daughter, the billing manager, defend the company. She also didn't prepare at all. No notes, no evidence, nothing. She apparently thought so much that she was going to win that she was just going to wing it. The judge starts asking her daughter questions, to which the owner, who apparently was in the car with her daughter on the way to the courthouse, started coaching her answers. The judge had to ask her multiple times to stop giving answers to the questions asked, as she was not listed as a witness and was not defending the company. She didn't actually stop, but she had to go to court about 15 minutes in, so her daughter was left to defend them. Now, in my state, if you file an appeal, it's your responsibility to provide a case, burden of proof. Apparently, neither the owner nor the daughter knew this, as they simply did not have a case. The judge asked them what happened, and she lied. A lot, to the point where the judge even pointed out inconsistencies in what was being told to her and had to even remind her that she was under oath and lying could result in a perjury charge. The absolute nail in the coffin was the questions I asked. Me, was I the only one using that device? Daughter, I don't know. Me, but you knew enough that I was terminated for it? Daughter, me, how about the device? Was it bought new or was it used? Daughter, it was new. Me, how was the device registered to another person? Daughter, me, and do you know who the person was that it was registered to? Daughter, no. Me, an ex-client. Things went on like that for a bit, then the judge chimed in. Judge, wait, what statute did he specifically violate? Daughter, he violated HIPAA. Judge, can you give me a specific state statute? Daughter, no, but if he can wait like 30 minutes, I could ask my mom. Judge, no, you were given plenty of time to prepare a case. Once this call ends, it's over. I sat there and smiled. I knew I won before the call even ended. We were told a decision would be mailed to us in 5 to 7 days or sooner if the judge came to a verdict. I got a letter 2 days later saying I had won. All of that was great and all, but the owner's daughter had accidentally stuck a few more nails in the company. The situation with the iPad was brought up to DHS automatically, as it was a potential HIPAA violation. I received a call a week or so later from a private investigator who took a statement about the iPad. I told him I had filed a complaint a few months ago and I had stated everything else that had been going on. I got the same, "We'll contact you with any further questions" speech, and I thought that was the end of it, until I got another letter. I saw DHS and was immediately thinking that they had found a way to appeal the appeal, and I started panicking. It wasn't my state's DHS either, it was federal. I was about to pass out when I opened it, and the letter stated that my complaint had been investigated and due to the findings were being transferred up to the federal level. I didn't know how to react. I never intended it to go on the federal level, but I'm not the government, so I don't know the severity of the trouble she's in. And that's where we are now. The owner has now fallen very ill and does not come to work anymore, according to a few coworkers who still talk to me. She also did not do well in her other court cases, and it looks like she may be facing prison time for insurance fraud, and the owner's daughter may be facing time for violating probation by taking drugs. I spoke to an ex-coworker, and she told me that several other employees have left after finding out what had been happening, with most of them stating that they don't want to get in trouble for being associated with any wrongdoings. A lot of them have criminal histories. I did forget to mention a few things about the owner and her daughter. The owner was originally a very nice person. She genuinely cared about the employees and her clients to the point where she sent all the staff on a spa day, girls one day, guys another. Sometime around November 2018, she started to get more petty and nitpicky and seemed to dismiss a lot of employee and client complaints as overreacting. I have no idea why this started, but she ceased to be the caring person she was and became a greedy, self-centered jerk, and her daughter goaded her behavior. She and her daughter became champion gaslighters. They both knew that I was taking medications that could give me memory problems, and they abused that knowledge, accusing me of not doing things or doing them wrong to pin mistakes on me. It became a problem to the point where I had to start taking notes of what was being said so I could point out to them as verification that I had done what was asked. When I was moved over to data entry, roughly January 2018, she gaslighted me into thinking I had accomplished nothing while in the office and literally called me a failure to my face. All of this was tragic because she was really a good person for quite some time. Heartbreaking, really. Update. I received a letter from the federal HHS about my complaint, and here is what it said. On August 23, 2019, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights received your complaint alleging that former employer FE, the covered entity, has violated the federal standards for privacy of individually identifiable health information and/or the security standards for the protection of electronic protected health information, 45 CFR Parts 160 and 164, Subparts A, C, and E, the privacy and security rules. Specifically, you allege that FE employees impermissibly take photos of patients on an iPad and upload the pictures to the patient's electronic health record. You also allege that FE verbally discloses protected health information by talking loudly in open spaces and conducting new patient intakes in rooms with patient files that are visible and unsecured. This allegation could reflect a violation of 45 CFR 164.530C. Thank you for bringing this matter to OCR's attention. Your complaint is an integral part of OCR's enforcement efforts. OCR enforces federal civil rights laws which prohibit discrimination in the delivery of health and human services based on race, color, national origin, disability, age, sex, religion, and the exercise of conscience, and also enforces the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, privacy, security, and breach notification rules. A covered entity must maintain reasonable and appropriate administrative, technical, and physical safeguards to prevent intentional or unintentional use or disclosure of PHI in violation of the privacy rule, and to limit its incidental use and disclosure pursuant to otherwise permitted or required use or disclosure, 45 CSR 164.530C. For example, such safeguards might include shredding documents containing protected health information before discarding them, securing medical records with lock and key or passcode, and limiting access to keys or passcodes. We have carefully reviewed your complaint against FE and have determined to resolve this matter informally through the provision of technical assistance to FE. Should OCR receive a similar allegation of noncompliance against FE in the future, OCR may initiate a formal investigation of that matter. Based on the foregoing, OCR is closing this case without further action, effective the date of this letter. OCR's determination, as stated in this letter, applies only to the allegations in this complaint that were reviewed by OCR. For those of you who don't speak government, they are giving my former employer a slap on the wrist, most likely because they were warned in advance of a visit from the government, and she was able to hide everything she was doing wrong. So that's it. I lose. Just another tally into the me column. I'm not exactly happy with the outcome, especially considering that this means that nothing would have happened had I still been working there and we received a complaint. So I was terminated for nothing, can't seek damages for the absolute destruction of my mental health, and she gets to keep breaking the law with no repercussions. Whatever, I'm gonna slam my head into a wall for a few hours, maybe then I can try to understand why stuff like this is allowed to happen. Thanks to all of you who had my back during all of this. Sorry I couldn't deliver a more satisfying ending.